Hey all, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Julie and I primarily make content surrounding topics such as mental health, makeup, as well as music. Today's video is for my Let's Get Clinical series, where I read you information about various mental health conditions from the DSM in regard to symptoms. I also go over prevalence as well as treatment options for these conditions. Today we're going to be discussing antisocial personality disorder. There are 10 personality disorders in the DSM-5. There are separate clusters that these personality disorders are categorized into. Antisocial personality disorder is considered to be a cluster B disorder. Cluster B personality disorders are characterized as dramatic, emotional, histrionic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, as well as narcissistic personality disorder are also in this category. The diagnostic criteria in order to be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder includes Criterion A. Criterion A is a pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others occurring since age 15 years, and it's indicated by 3 or more of the following. So there's a few possible symptoms within this criterion listed here, but you only need 3 to qualify for the diagnosis. The first is failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. So legal troubles are a big component of ASPD, however, they are not a requirement for the diagnosis. We also have deceitfulness as indicated by repeated lying, use of aliases or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. Next, impulsivity or failure to plan ahead. Next is irritability and aggressiveness as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. Next, we have consistent irresponsibility as indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations. Lastly, we have lack of remorse as indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. Criterion B, like all personality disorders, is that the individual must be at least 18 years of age to be diagnosed. Criterion C entails that there's evidence of conduct disorder with onset before 15 years old. And finally, Criterion D entails the occurrence of antisocial behavior is not exclusively during the course of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, because there can be antisocial behavior within these diagnoses, so it's important to rule them out before determining if this is truly antisocial personality disorder. The diagnostic features section for antisocial personality disorder discusses that the patterns within it have often been referred to as psychopathy, sociopathy, or dissocial personality disorder. The ICD lists this mental health condition as dissocial personality disorder, if you are interested. In regard to Criterion C having to do with an individual having a diagnosis of conduct disorder in their childhood with onset before age of 15 years, this section goes further into depth about that. In regard to this criterion, conduct disorder has to do with a repetitive and persistent pattern of behavior in which the basic rights of others or major age-appropriate societal norms or rules are violated. Typically, conduct disorder falls into one of the following 4 categories, these being aggression to people and animals, destruction of property, deceitfulness or theft, or serious violation of rules. According to the DSM, associated features supporting this antisocial personality disorder diagnosis include that individuals with this condition tend to lack empathy and also may be callous, cynical, as well as contemptuous of the feelings, rights, and sufferings of others. They may have an inflated and arrogant self-appraisal, feeling that ordinary work is beneath them, or lacking a realistic concern about their current problems for their future. They may also be excessively opinionated, self-assured, or cocky. They may display a glib, superficial charm as well. It's also important to understand that despite individuals with ASPD lacking empathy, this doesn't mean they don't struggle with emotions of their own. Individuals with this condition can also experience dysphoria, including complaints of tension, inability to tolerate boredom, as well as depressed mood. They can even have comorbid anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, or substance use disorders. Substance use disorders are especially comorbid for this population. They can have somatic symptom disorder, gambling disorder, or any disorder that is related to impulse control. There may also be overlap in their symptoms pertaining to other cluster B personality disorders, which I previously mentioned were narcissistic, borderline, as well as histrionic personality disorders. I found an interesting journal article that went over the similarities and differences of psychopathy versus antisocial personality disorder. Although psychopathy is not in the DSM-5, it has specific characteristics to it that are similar to ASPD, but are not always the case for individuals who are diagnosed with this condition. According to this article, psychopathy, although not acknowledged in the DSM, is theorized to be a personality disorder that consists of affective deficits. Psychopathy is almost exclusively investigated with criminal populations, which are typically in prison settings or forensic settings. One major difference between these conditions is that ASPD holds an emphasis on behavioral traits of the individual, whereas psychopathy entails aspects such as impulsivity, shallow affect, superficial charm, callousness, as well as manipulation, which is typically comprised of two factors, those being antisocial deviance as well as interpersonal difficulties. Now that we've covered the extensive symptoms within this condition, we're going to talk about prevalence. According to the DSM, which was published in 2013, the 12-month prevalence rate of this condition, using criteria from previous DSMs for diagnosis as well, are between 0.2% and 3.3%. The highest prevalence of this condition, which is greater than 70%, is among samples of males with alcohol use disorder from substance abuse clinics, prisons, or other forensic settings. Prevalence is also higher in samples affected by adverse socioeconomic status, such as those in poverty, or sociocultural issues such as migration factors. Risks for developing this mental health condition include genetic as well as environmental factors in one's childhood. This can put them at a potential risk of developing this condition, especially if there's a family member they live with who has the condition. ASPD tends to be much more common in males than females, although there is general concern that females may be underdiagnosed because of the emphasis on aggressive tendencies in criterion for conduct disorder. Because remember, going back, they need to have that diagnosis prior to the age of 15 to qualify for this diagnosis. Moving forward to treatment. Individuals with this condition often are difficult to treat because many of them don't seek therapy. For those that do, completion rates are unfortunately fairly low, as many individuals with ASPD struggle to commit to the treatment process, or they may not even be willing to go to treatment. Psychotherapy still tends to be recommended for this population, but it's not always found to be effective. According to an article by Bateman et al., published in 2016, they did a controlled trial of mentalization-based treatment for comorbid borderline personality disorder as well as antisocial personality disorder. Mentalization-based treatment for these individuals was found beneficial in regard to treating aggression-related symptoms. Reductions were also found in aspects such as anger, hostility, paranoia, as well as self-harm and suicide attempt frequencies. Improvements were also recorded within negative mood, interpersonal problems, as well as social adjustment. This form of treatment has been found to be effective for individuals with BPD. To give you a little bit of a background on what it is, it's a structured treatment that consists of cognitive, psychodynamic, and relational aspects of therapy. It has a basis in attachment theory, as well as the ability to mentalize. Mentalization tends to help individuals to better understand the mental state, not only of themselves, but the mental states of others as well, which this makes sense because that would help to improve someone's empathic abilities, which is something that individuals with ASPD tend to lack. I also found an article from Davidson et al. Published in 2009 having to do with looking at cognitive behavior therapy being utilized for violent men who have ASPD but live in the community. So according to this article, I found that CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, may also be used for treating this condition. Unfortunately, the efficacy of this treatment for this population tends to be low, especially specifically for men with the condition that are living in a community as opposed to a prison setting. Rodrigo et al. In 2010 talk about that the most important thing for antisocial personality disorder is prevention. When antisocial behaviors are exhibited in childhood, it is crucial to treat these behaviors and treat the child's mental health struggles so that it doesn't develop into ASPD into adulthood. And often prior to conduct disorder, some children may be diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, and it's just really important in general to intervene. Finally, the last article I want to mention was published by Little in 2016 and has to do with multidimensional family therapy, which is an evidence-based treatment for many mental health conditions. Multidimensional family therapy has a high efficacy rate, meaning it tends to be effective according to the research in regard to treating youth with substance abuse issues who also have antisocial behaviors. Unfortunately, similar to individuals with antisocial personality disorder, treatment adherence is not high. Youth dropout rates while undergoing this treatment can be anywhere from 40 to 60%. But again, multidimensional family therapy is meant to treat conduct disorder or to treat antisocial behaviors. Substance abuse issues and substance abuse disorders tend to be the most prevalent co-occurring mental health condition for individuals with ASPD, and there are plenty of evidence-based treatment options to help with this condition. And if someone is in recovery from substance abuse, it would make sense that this would help to alleviate some of their antisocial behaviors and aggressive tendencies. However, directly treating the ASPD is really difficult, and there unfortunately is a limited amount of evidence on it since many individuals in this population tend not to seek therapy. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel as well. We're going to be doing personality disorders next for Let's Get Clinical, so I hope it's interesting to you. It's definitely interesting to me. Leave a comment down below letting me know if you knew anything about antisocial personality disorder. If you have any questions, leave them down below as well. If you'd like to follow me on my social medias, my Instagram is Julie_counseling. My Twitter is JulieCounseling with no underscore, and my Facebook page will be linked down below as well. And I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye guys.